so long that his 3 children all grow up there. Dickens describes the prison. 30 years ago there stood, in the borough of Southwark, on the left-hand side of the way going southward, the Marshalsea prison. It stood there many years before, and it remained there some years afterwards. But it is gone now, and the world is none the worse without it. It was an oblong pile of barrack buildings, partitioned into squalid houses, standing back to back so there were no back rooms, environed by a narrow paved yard, hemmed in by high walls, duly spiked at the top. Today, the draconian measures of debtor's prison are a thing of the past. Nowadays, for those with unmanageable amounts of debt, the option of a bankruptcy discharge offers the opportunity for a fresh start. Should a debtor be allowed to walk away from paying their debts? What do you think?
Okay. What do you think about this question? Did you all hear the question? Do you agree, disagree?
We're busy to eat.
Okay.
What is the question now?
Key points. The Torah exhorts a creditor to treat an insolvent debtor with dignity. The Torah obligates a debtor to completely repay all debts. Jewish law does not have a precedent for a bankruptcy discharge that is available whenever a debtor defaults. The Torah obligates one to lend to another in need. These loans must be interest-free. An insolvent debtor whose property is seized by creditors must be assisted by the community fund. These gifts may not be seized by creditors. The law of the land is the law means that we must follow the laws of our host countries.
I'll play it one more time. Let me see if this time you can pay attention a little bit. Because it has to do
In
with a whole...
1824, in London, England, John Dickens was imprisoned in the notorious Marshalsea prison for debt he was unable to repay. To support the family, his 12-year-old son Charles endured appalling conditions, working in a factory for meager wages. Young Charles was deeply affected by his father's disgrace, and many years later, as the greatest writer of the Victorian era, he immortalized his experiences. In Charles Dickens' novel Little Dorrit, William Dorrit is imprisoned at the Marshalsea prison for so long that his 3 children all grow up there. Dickens describes the prison. 30 years ago there stood, in the borough of Southwark, on the left-hand side of the way going southward, the Marshalsea prison. It stood there many years before, and it remained there some years afterwards. But it is gone now, and the world is none the worse without it. It was an oblong pile of barrack buildings, partitioned into squalid houses, standing back to back so there were no back rooms, environed by a narrow paved yard, hemmed in by high walls, duly spiked at the top. Today, the draconian measures of debtor's prison are a thing of the past. Nowadays, for those with unmanageable amounts of debt, the option of a bankruptcy discharge offers the opportunity for a fresh start. Should a debtor be allowed to walk away from paying their debts? What do you think?
Is the question clear now?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think yes.
Maybe I'm biased. I've been in bankruptcy court too many times. I say no. I've seen such abuse.
Whatever law you overput is an abuse of the law, even if it's in a, So the problem is not abusing the law. The problem is that it helping the society and the people, and the outcome is better for the people or not. Abusing law is always there,
Maybe that's
That's what I've seen too much of.
Yes, they give you a key for the car and then you open another car, so don't make a key for the car, you know what I'm saying? So,
I would have to let him go. And you let him go and he gets back on his feet and gets back in the same problem, same situation the second time.
well, there is a law about the bankruptcy, you cannot constantly find bankruptcy. There has to be a distance time.
At that time, 7 years and
Says, so he knows as a and after the bankruptcy, I mean, we talking about chapter 11 or chapter 7?
Either one.
Chapter 7 is everything gone. It doesn't have anything to pay.
Yeah, but the other one's reorganization.
And the other one is reorganization. So if the guy go chapter 7, there's nothing to pay. By hanging him, torturing him, you know, he's already in the situation. Unless that he has money at the other side. And they can take him, that's a different story.
Well, that's the question. Sometimes people do it in a way to hide money. Sometimes people are real. And there are certain bankruptcy laws are in place. What Torah has to say about it? Should we allow people to forgive their debts and come in, start new page, or you owe the money, you don't have to pay it now. Whenever you're gonna make it, come back and pay.
That's chapter 11.
Not in full.
Hmm?
They pay.
Isn't there a kind of a bankruptcy in 7 years?
Oh,
if you don't
get
pay
the
in
money,
7
get
years,
all the money.
then it's
Also
gone.
something like that.
They don't make
But
money.
what happens, isn't there the Jubilee year?
I'm,
Do they waive everybody of their debts when that happens?
There is a jubilee year, yes, and there is a sabbatical year.
so that's mean the Torah says you can forgive the law. So the Torah
But even though the Torah says there is a sabbatical year, came Hillel Hazaken, Chachamim, and issued a rule. It's called Prusbul. Have you heard about Prusbul?
Yeah. They say-
Prusbul means all the debts are moving to the Beddin, and the Beddin can collect anytime they want. 3 people sign. You do sign before Shemitah. Okay. I'm a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Let's start the
And
class.
that's how they get
In a certain,
they get corrupted.
Let's start the class in a certain direction, so we will get somewhere. You know, there is a story told about a landlord that the Jewish people would rent a home or rent a business and run a business, and then suddenly the economy was down, they couldn't afford to pay. What they used to do? The landlord comes, takes the Jewish family, not the man, but the entire family, and throws them into the pit. And they're underground, literally, in a pit, and above there is a little opening, and every day he throws in some crumbs of food. And the family lives there. That's their home now. And then eventually the family has a children there. And the children grow up in that pit, and they're used to see every day a little bit crumbs coming in, and that's our food. And they're used to this pit till one day the landlord, the landowner comes in and says, opens up the pit, get out. Okay, you're free to go now. And the kid says, I'm happy here. Why would I want to go? I love it here. I grew up here. I'm used to that. What do you want me to go? Sounds funny?
Yeah.
Each and every one of us are in the same position.
Oh, definitely.
Why? When Mashiach will come, times will be so great. Everyone will have anything and everything you want in life.
How you know?
The Rambam writes. The
How
Torah
he
writes.
knows?
Rambam.
How he knows?
How does he know? From Talmud. Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Tzadik Chet Amud Bet. Open up and you'll see. And how does the Gemara knows? From Moshe Rabbeinu. How does Moshe Rabbeinu know? From Hashem. How does Hashem know? Let's go to Hashem and ask him this question. So,
We don't know.
In that case, when there is going to be a time of no competition, no jealousy, no fights, nothing, there'll be a great time. Why would we want to live here? We like it here. The pressure and the fights and the competition makes us stronger. That's in a certain, just an example to show us how our lives are compared to that family. But it used to be, in the past, if someone did not pay, the landowner could do whatever they wanted with that person. That person to turn to become their slave. It's not something that is unheard of. If you open up, it's called Melachim Bet in Nevi'im. It's in your book, page 74. And if you want to read something, go ahead, you start.
Okay. Now a woman, a wife of the disciples of the prophets, cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, has died, and you know that your servant was God-fearing, and the creditor has come to take my 2 children as slaves."
What happened exactly with that woman? Who is that woman that came to cry to Elisha? That woman was the wife of Ovadia Hanavi. Was a prophet. Who was Ovadia Hanavi? He was the chief of staff of Achav, the king, and his wife, Isabel. They were Jewish, king and queen, but they were evil. Achav was Jewish.
Yeah, but the wife wasn't Jewish.
That's the question. It's a debate. And they were both, who's their chief of staff? Is Ovadia Hanavi, the prophet Ovadia. He runs the home. And Ovadia was a righteous man. Obviously, he was a prophet. There were hundreds of people who had to run away from the king to the desert because the king was looking to kill them for no reason. He was an evil king. Ovadia, the chief of staff of the house of the king, decided to save those people. He buys them food. He sends messengers to them, hide in the caves, and whenever the king wants to send soldiers, he lets them know to run to the other side. But the bottom line, Ovadia is sending them constantly food to the desert. Food and water, everything to save this hundreds of people. And one day, Ovadia runs out of money. He has literally not enough money to pay for himself. So what does he do? He goes and borrows money. Ovadia was well known, had a good reputation, was the prophet. Everyone gave him a loan. They knew Ovadia is nothing to worry about it. But Ovadia even went further. He needed big loans because to keep hundreds of people in the desert alive, you need a lot of money. So who did he go to? To the king. He went to Achav. He went to his wife Isabel separately and he said, "Lend me money." And they knew Ovadia is working for them. Nothing to worry. So they lent him. But then suddenly Ovadia passed on. And when Ovadia passed away, Isabel came and she says, "Where am I collecting this money from?" She came to the wife of Ovadia. And she says to her, "You have 2 children. Okay, I'm going to sell your children as slaves and recuperate the losses what I gave to your husband." And this, we speak about the wife of Ovadia Hanavi and her and their children. So what does she do? She runs to the next prophet, Elisha. And she tells Elisha, Avdecha ishi met, your servant, who was the servant of Hashem, died. V'ata yadata, and you know, ki avdecha yeret Hashem, and you know that what he did was not for his own benefit. He went to take loans to save people's lives. V'anoshe ba lakachat et shnei yeladai lo la'avadim. And this Isabel is coming to take my 2 children as slaves for the good deeds of their father. What I do now? So here we see there is a system in place. You have the money, you pay. You don't have the money, they can sell you as a slave. You basically turn to become the slave of the person that you owe money, till you pay back. So what does happen? What happens to a person who doesn't have money? So it happens to be in that specific case, Elisha Navi went to help this woman. And he helped the woman with a miracle. He told her, the end of the story goes that he told her, go and borrow vessels from all your neighbors, as many as you can get. And he asked her, what do you have at home? She said, I have a little jar of oil. That's all what's left in my home. So Elisha tells her, borrow as many empty vessels as you can find. And what should I do then, she says? Then you take the vessel of oil and pour and fill up all the empty vessels. Oil costs a lot of money. But if you, from a little vessel, turns to all these vessels, she was able to sell all the oil, pay back all the debts, and it was left still plenty beyond. So that's what Elisha Hanavi did for his friend. But not every day was such miracles. Unfortunately not. And many people would suffer. There's one of the most important mitzvot of the Torah. It's called Mitzvat Pidyon Shvuyim. It says that Pidyon Shvuyim is a person who helps to save a person from that jail, and that specifically applies to those times that the people would be thrown, the entire family, to the pit, is for sure has a chelek l'olam haba, it says. For sure that person will not go to Gehinnom. And it's one of the greatest mitzvot, Pidyon Shvuyim. So here we understand that in those days when you can do whatever you want with your whoever owes you the money, thank God the only one that did not agree with that rule was the Torah. And soon we will come across to understand what's the law of the Torah, which Torah totally disagreed with this whole concept that who owes you money becomes your slave. Before we're going to start what the Torah law is, if you can, Ilya, read for us the story that we mentioned before. Page 76.
Diamond merchant declared bankruptcy according to the laws of a country outside of Israel. Accordingly, a settlement was made with his creditors to repay a certain percentage of what he had owed. After living in Israel for a number of years, he succeeded in his affairs and was restored to his financial position. Now his previous creditors are demanding that he repay the rest of what he owed, the rest of what they were owed. However, the merchant claimed that since they had agreed to accept a certain percentage of the debts as settlement, he is exempt from any further collections from the standpoint of both law and decency. What is the law?
So what do we understand from here? If someone didn't have money, the Torah says, okay, not the Torah, the law of the country says, chapter 11 or chapter 7, whatever it is, but it's a chapter in life, and you move on. Close that chapter, start fresh. Okay, that person did whatever chapter he did, and he moved away to Israel. Started a business in Israel, and Baruch Hashem, the will moved around, and he became a very well-to-do person. Now the original people, who they settled with him on pennies and a dollar, came back to him and said, listen, you can afford to pay. Okay, by the law, you don't have to. But by the Jewish law, who exempts you? Does he have to pay by the Jewish law or not? This question came to the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Metzger. How long ago? Makes a difference. The Torah is eternal.
If they settle, they agree, so they are not entitled. But if they tell him, give us that much, and if you have it in the future to give us, they're entitled to. But if they didn't agree for the...
You know the rules of Mekach Ta'ut? You know what's Mekach Ta'ut? Mekach Ta'ut means if someone did a business deal with false information,
Yeah.
obviously the whole deal is baseless. If they made an agreement because this person had no money, but happened to be he was hiding money somewhere else, would that agreement apply?
No.
No. So in this case, when the Torah, and that's the question, does the Torah give you a way out if you owe someone money?
Yeah.
And the reason why the modern law says that you should not continue paying and whatever, there is several reasons for it. Number one, why there's, maybe the lawyer can explain to us, why do we have such laws, bankruptcy? Why are bankruptcy laws, Gershon, you know?
The reason we have bankruptcy laws is that at a certain point, debts, wipe out themselves in 20 years. If you get a judgment against someone for a debt, the debt after 10 years would wipe out unless you renew the judgment, which you could renew for 10 years. So regardless of the debt.
If renewed every year or renewed every 10 years?
At the end of 10 years, you can renew it once.
Another 10 years.
Exactly. The concept of the bankruptcy law was that institutional lenders and in general lenders, whether they be business or whatever, assume certain risks as being lenders. And people have to move on with their lives. So the concept behind the bankruptcy law, at least for individuals, was that they, in essence, it's like in a fruit store. They know some of the fruit's going to go bad, and that's calculated into the price. So the bankers know that some of the debt is going to go bad. It's calculated into the price, and then people can move on. If they were straddled with these judgments and debts over them, they couldn't live a normal life. So that was the concept behind the personal bankruptcy law.
So there is a reason so they can move on with life, and also it's productive for the society. So they can go back to life and continue supporting the society. What Torah has to say about a loan? How does Torah regards it? Perla, 77.
When you lend money to my people, to a poor person who is with you, you should not behave toward him as a lender. If you take your neighbor's garment as a security, you shall return it to him before sunset, for it is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. In what shall he sleep? And it shall be, if he cries out to me, I will hear, because I am gracious.
So here the Torah is very, very clear. Im kesef talveh et ami, when you lend money to my people, it's not if you lend, but you're obligated to lend money. You cannot charge interest, and you cannot, lo tiyeh lo kenoshen, and you cannot behave as a creditor. Even further to come to say, if you have taken out from him something that he needs to use it, and you want to keep it as a collateral for your loan, and he needs it, you are obligated to give it back to him.
Permanently? Or just when you need
For
to-
that time.
Or just for the time?
In the morning, you can exchange. So, look to what extent the Torah goes. The Torah says, when you are obligated to lend money to the poor, you are obligated to behave not as a creditor, and the halacha says even further. You're not allowed to walk into his home to ask him for the loan. If you want to ask him for the loan, stay outside. If he wants to come out, he'll talk to you. But you go to the synagogue and you know you'll meet him. You know you cannot act as a creditor, so you will stand in front of him and look at him. Make him uncomfortable. Are you allowed to do that? Also not. Torah says you're not even allowed to look, to stand in front of him. Just move away from him. Whenever he will have the money, he will pay you. So, you question, so then why would you go lend any money? If that's the law of the Torah, if you want to read a little bit further, 78, 3b and 3c.
According to biblical law, when a creditor demands payment of his debt, if no property belonging to the debtor is found, or only those items that he is permitted to keep are found, the debtor goes free and we do not imprison him. As it says, you shall not behave toward him as a lender. It is clear that if the debtor does not have money to pay his debts, the creditor cannot force the borrower to work for him, nor sell him or account of the unpaid debt. This is so even if the borrower stipulated that his body will serve as a collateral. It is certainly forbidden to torment him until he pays.
So here it's very, very clear. The Torah says money is one thing, life is another thing. You can lend, borrow money, but you cannot act as you own that person. You cannot lend as you are the creditor of that person. You cannot act like he owes you anything. You have to behave towards him totally, with total respect. Comes the question, is there in Torah a way to get rid of the debt or not? That totally the debt is forgotten. So the Torah gives one more option, 79. Who wants to read next? Michael, go ahead.
At the end of 7 years, you shall make a release. This is the manner of the release. The release the hand of every creditor from what he lent his friend. He shall not extract from his friend or his brother, because the time of the release for God has arrived.
So what does release means? You have to forget about it. So why would a lender lend any money? If I take a risk on my money to lend someone and I'm not getting any interest, so I'm not gaining anything, why would I want to lend money? Very nice mitzvah. But give charity. You want to give charity, give charity. Why would I want to lend money and make it as charity? Give charity. Forget about lending.
Because when you lend it, you don't expect not to get it back.
So you do expect it to get it
No, I
back?
said when you lend something to somebody, most of the time you expect to get it back.
Yeah.
No, but it's one thing to go to your friend and say, can you lend me money, I'll pay you back, when I make it. Another thing to say, listen, I'm struggling right now, can you just give me money? So it's, you know, it's a little
So
more.
giving money is charity.
Giving
We
money-
know that, right? So charity, we know it is charity. You give the money, you don't expect anything in return. But if you do give a loan, and he comes to you and says, I need a loan from you, I don't want a charity. Do you expect back the money?
If the guy can pay you back, you expect it.
Well, obviously, if you give a loan, you expect it back. When you give charity, you don't expect it
No,
back.
but you can't assume that the guy's gonna have money. He doesn't control ultimately what his finances are gonna be. How do you know tomorrow he's not gonna break a leg and be kicked out of his job and not be able to pay back? That's the risk that you take.
Very good question. And for that reason, people do two things. When you give a loan, the Talmud recommends a collateral. Do you have any collateral? You have any properties? How about this property should be a collateral for the loan? Okay, I'll give you a loan. But make this property as a collateral for this loan. Okay? Fine. If I fail to pay back, you can have the property. Sounds good? Okay. However, if that person who needs a loan doesn't own any property, and he needs a loan, what happens then? Talmud goes even further. You must have a document of a loan. But if he doesn't have money, what's the document going to help? On each document that is made for a loan has to be guarantors. Two people who guarantee the loan. If that person cannot afford to pay you, we will pay you for it instead of him.
Do you have the right to ask somebody what they can, if somebody asks you for a loan, do you have the right to ask them what they need it for?
If you have guarantors or you have collateral, what's your business? He needs it.
Maybe you want to do gambling.
Again, you have a guarantor or you have collateral.
To
How
other
do-
gamblers.
Huh?
To other gamblers.
Gambling can be also doing business is gambling, you know? When you invest into business, one can see it as opportunity, the other one can see it as gambling.
He could be doing something illegal that you don't want to get involved
So
in.
then there is no end to what you can suspect. You are not the police guy. You are a Jew who wants to do a mitzvah the correct way. That's it. Whatever this person will do, you're not there to police anyone. Yeah.
I lent a friend some money 3 years ago. I didn't ask him for collateral. He, sometime later, offered for me to hold a watch that was a valuable watch until he
Pays you back.
paid me back. He never gave me the watch either.
All this is done before the loan is given. After the loan is
I
given,
didn't ask him. I mean, I said
If
I
you
trusted
trust
him.
him-
I trusted him to do the right
and
thing.
you still trust him, right? So it's
Well,
fine.
it's a few years later, I'm starting to say, you know,
All that is done before the loan is happening. After the loan happened, and he offered you as a watch, he's a nice guy. He offered you a watch. He doesn't have to offer you because during the loan didn't happen.
you're giving me the watch
No,
already?
you
or
gave it to
not?
me.
Can I have the watch now?
I know the person that gives any time, if you come to them, to that person, he gives you a loan. But it says with one condition, just give me that person to be the guarantor, that's all. If that person signs as guarantor, I can give you any loan you want. Because that person happens to be a very sincere, well-to-do person, and if his name is signed somewhere, he will respect the signature.
Next time, Rabbi, maybe I'll come to you, I'll ask you to be the guarantor.
In that case, depends who's the lender, who takes the loan.
You told a story once about the guarantor.
Which one?
Somebody came to this very wealthy woman and borrowed money for him, and he got all this money, and he never came back in time to pay it back. And she went to the seashore,
And?
and she was waiting and waiting, that he was supposed to be the guarantor, and all of a sudden all sorts of gold and everything started washing in.
There's a different story, very, very similar story. with the Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev.
What's the story is that?
Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev once walked into the synagogue and two people approached him. One person says, we have a din Torah. What's the din Torah is all about? He took a loan from me and he had to pay me back within 30 days. And the guarantee was my olam haba. The person signed over, if you don't give me back the money, I will instead take your world to come. You share in the world to come. It's going to become mine. And now, 30 days passed, and on the day in 31, he jumps on him and says, here is the money. He says, I'm sorry, you're a day late. I already collected from the world to come. So they came to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak to fight. This one says, I want to pay him back the loan. And the other one says, I'm sorry. The contract says on the 30th day. Day 31, I already collected from the world to come. Who's right?
You can give money back to Olam Haba, and the Olam Haba give the life back to the person.
Who is this guy who wants to take someone else's whole life?
He says, listen, I'm so sure I'll pay you back. If not, it's my world to come is yours. Olam haba. The other person agreed.
You can't take somebody as a slave or their kids as slaves because they don't pay you, even if they agree to it. How much more so can you not take their olam haba?
Oh, we can take it.
Maybe he goes to hell anyway.
The power of the money. You promise.
But he can give him olam haba too now. From now on, he can start a new slave. Anyway. So let's go back to our topic. To understand, if the lender cannot take interest, so there is a solution. Because the Chachamim realized Tina'el Delet Bifnei Lovim. Whenever it needs a loan to be done, the lender says, I'm sorry, I have no money to give you. Okay, it's a big mitzvah to give you money, but I have no money now to give you. Because I have to do business with my money. My money is not free and available. If I have extra money, I can do business with that. Why would I give it to you? So the Chachamim came up with a new idea. It's called Heter Iska. That a loan, you're not allowed to collect interest. But you're allowed to invest in someone's business and then collect the profit. So don't call it interest, call it profit. That's called Heter Iska. Then the Chachamim realized Shemitah comes, the sabbatical year, and all the loans are free. So again the lender says, why would I give away my money and the guy will play games with me till Shemitah comes and then boom, done. Forget it. So what the Chachamim came up with another solution. What is that? The Torah says between individuals it will be forgotten. But if the individual gives over the power of the loan to the Beit Din can collect any time. So before Shemitah, it's called Pruzbul. Pruz Buliubuti, which is 3 Aramaic words in the language of the Talmud, that Hillel HaZaken, after the destruction of the second Holy Temple, blessed you, said, you should give it over to the Beit Din. So whoever owes you money, you're not going to be forgiven. You come, give it over, say, my loan belongs to you, Beit Din, to the rabbinical court, and the court can collect anytime they want.
But the court give it back to the person, or they can keep the money for themselves?
When the court collects, they don't take for themselves, obviously. They give it back as a gift to the person. Yeah.
That was my question.
When Chachamim created the taking of profits rather than interest from somebody's business, did they still regard it as a loan, meaning to say that if no profits came from the business, you still owe the money? Or did it consider an investment, meaning that you gave the money as an investment, you now own part of the business, but...
When it comes to the profits, you can compromise. But it comes to the principal, you still are obligated to pay back if you have the money. Even though it's a business venture, since he is the one to invest the money, he gets the principal first. You're obligated to pay back. About the outcome of the business, that depends. So let's go back to 79. To what extent is a person obligated to pay the loan back? If the person claims, I have very little bit left, not much, can I force him to pay back? Shmuel, go ahead. 79, 5a and 5b. The first one is the Maimonides. When a lender...
At the end of the 7 years, right?
No, when a lender demands 79, 5a.
When a lender demands payments of a loan, even if the lender is wealthy and the borrower is struggling for his basic subsistence, we are not merciful in judgment. Instead, we expropriate all the movable property that the borrower owns until the last penny of the debt is paid. If the movable property is not sufficient, we expropriate real property.
So first we go after movable property, metaltalin it's called. We don't go right away to the real estate, because real estate, especially in those times, it was inherited from generation to generation. It was the family's property. That was the family's wealth. So we wouldn't go, the Bedin would not immediately go in after the real estate of the family. They would first go to anything that is tangible within the house. Anything, tables, any that can go to pay back. If that was not sufficient, then they go after the property also. That's according to the Maimonides. And according to Shulchan Aruch Hoshen Mishpat, go ahead, 80, 5b.
We tell the debtor, bring all the movable property that you have. Don't leave out even a single needle. We give the debtor food for 30 days, clothing for 12 months, not including things like silken clothes or a golden turban, a couch to sit upon, and a bed and sheets fit for the debtor to sleep upon. If he is a craftsman, we give him 2 tools of each type. Even a Torah scholar is not spared his books or even a Torah scroll. They are like the rest of his possessions that are seized by the creditor.
Here the Torah goes even further, that we do give him some food. We don't get him totally naked. He has to get clothing for 12 months, food for 30 days, and he has to have a bed with sheets to sleep on. That you cannot take away from him. 30 days food. What happens if he doesn't have any money to buy food after that? Who's responsible? Now the lender has to give him back his money so he can buy food? The man is a poor man, lost everything. Who's responsible to take care of him?
The guy that lent him the money.
Why would he be responsible?
Why?
He lent him the money, he did a mitzvah, now he has to be punished?
No, it's not punished. It's an opportunity of life. He has to take care of his food.
That's why you
and his
didn't
life.
come last time, that's why you missed this information. What are you saying? The community. The community has to allocate funds to help the person, period. The whole community has to do that, not the one lender. Why would the one lender do that? It's very much compared when you buy an insurance policy. what happens when we buy an insurance policy? In general, when we buy an insurance policy, everyone, instead of one person should suffer a great loss, everyone suffers a little bit. A community who puts money into and that's what every community must have, to help the poor people in the community, must be a kupat tzedakah, a special fund to help people in need who are poor.
What happens if the person who did the lending contributed to the community fund? Can he take his portion back out?
So the you don't get take back.
It's
So
also
the is not
identity.
Huh?
When you put to the community, it lost identity. You don't know what money goes to.
Correct.
It's not your money.
The question is more than that. For sure, from the community fund, you're not allowed to take it back. You only give it one way. It doesn't go back. It goes from there only to poor people. The question is, when the poor person gets money from the community for his needs, are you allowed, as the lender, go to the poor person, take away the money from him?
No.
You got the money, so let me take my loan.
But they give you money enough to live and to survive, not to.
But if they are generous with him, to survive takes $100, they gave him $500 for the week. And the lender says, well, you have extra $400. You can survive on $100. Why would you need 500? 400 comes to me. What do you say?
That's right.
Yeah? What?
The person should have the decency to, if you have more than what you need to give, or it's
This
not-
is charity fund, is given to them.
How do they determine how much he needs?
They give it to him. They like him. They have the extra money. This is the only poor guy in
The
town.
person not
So
take
you could-
more than is necessary, considering there are probably other people who bring.
The question is, what is necessary?
Well, clearly, if his
Each and every
necessities are
person's
already bought
necessities are
$500.
different.
Food and shelter.
No, but I'm saying, if his necessities are $400, clearly 500 is not necessary. 150 arguably.
If you want to eat meat every day, or you want to eat meat only on Shabbat.
If the community give it to them, that's when he should get that money. That's it. That the charity don't give a charity money to as a loan, a return loan.
So he's asking for more than he needs.
If they give it to him, they give it to him. Charity money don't give back. It's a one way. Right, Rob?
Obviously, when it comes to give money, as a lender, you are entitled to get everything that belongs to the person that took them the debt. However, if the community already is supporting that person, whatever money the community gives is for that person, not extra. There was a story in Egypt that one of the Chachamim in Egypt found out that the poor man needed some money. Comes the wealthy lender and tells the charity, no, the poor man needs more money. And they asked the wealthy man, who is usually a contributor to the fund, how much the poor man needs. And instead to give him 100 or 200, he recommended give him 1,000 already. And when they gave him the 1,000, he took off the 800 and gave him the 200. He said, listen, I took care of him. He has the 200 to leave, but the extra I took back what he owes me. When the Chacham found out about it, he told the wealthy man, return all that money back to the fund. It doesn't belong to you. So obviously, I mean, there is such a commotion to think, if the community shares the loss, why should I be the only one to share such a great loss? Let's everyone share the loss.
But not everybody loan the money. He is the one that should earn the money.
But if the community is involved, what's the difference? Are you allowed to steal $100 and give it to charity?
No.
No, obviously not. I'm not taking it for myself, I'm stealing to give the money. No, you're not allowed to. Are you allowed to take a loan, $100 and not to give it back? What's the difference? It's also stealing.
Yeah, but what about the Robin Hood?
Huh?
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
But if you say it's a mitzvah, if you don't bear any risk, no matter what, you're going to get paid because the community is going to support them. And you can, over time, recover your money from the community donations. Then what's the scoot here? Why is it a mitzvah then? It's got to be scoot, right? And
why would people lend money? What's the reason for people to lend money? There is no benefit. There is a lot of risk involved. And who knows that person will ever appreciate what you did for him. Because you might say, you have to lend me money. Okay. There's 3 reasons for each person not to lend money. The Torah comes on page 82, 7a. Go ahead, Mayor.
If there will be among you a needy person, you shall not harden your heart, and you shall not close your hand to your needy brother. Rather, you shall surely open your hand to him, and you shall lend him sufficient for his needs which he is lacking. When you lend money to my people, to the poor person who is with you, you shall not behave towards him as a lender. You shall not impose interest on him.
So you have to lend him, and you cannot impose interest, and you have to take the risk.
Isn't that because when you say the money is not really ours, it's a loan to us also?
It's a good point. That's a good point that you mentioned.
Very good point.
Because that, what you're saying now, perhaps comes to the idea, why is the Torah says, comes the sabbatical year, it's forgotten. The money that you gave as a loan should be forgotten. Why should it be forgotten? I gave a loan. This person took the loan. Let him give it back. Why would the Torah come and say, no, comes the sabbatical should be forgotten? Well, that comes from the idea that you just mentioned. When comes the sabbatical year, we allocate and we say everything that we have belongs to Hashem. It's not really our money. So this money that I lend out, it goes on Hashem's account. It doesn't have to come back to me. That's the idea of the Shemitah. If a person has such a strong faith to know that everything comes from Hashem, why would I want it back? Hashem took it, means Hashem knows what Hashem doing, and that's fine, because Hashem will replenish it with something new and better.
So, I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah.
So, let me get this straight. It is an obligation to lend, even though there is no gain into it. There is not much anybody can do, and after 7 years, it could be absolved of any repayment, and it's just a matter of having faith.
Well, when the Jewish people were on a certain level, and we're speaking about the Torah was given to people who were righteous, and then they went into the Holy Land, and they behaved with full faith of Hashem, and they were on a certain level of connection to Hashem. Hashem's revelation in the Beit HaMikdash was so revealed that they saw daily miracles. They saw how God acted in such a miraculous ways that they wanted to give more a mitzvah, because that connects me more to Hashem. But at the second holy temple, when the faith went down, when the connection to the Jewish people went down, to Hashem went down, then started a new level. Then started a level of people who were connected now to their money instead to be connected to Hashem. I once shared with you the story, the difference between the first Beit HaMikdash and the second Beit HaMikdash. In the first holy temple, people were running to do idol worshiping. Their greatest desires was, how can they be idol worshippers? Then came the Chachamim and asked Hashem, remove that desire. Idol worshippers, how can Jewish people be idol worshippers? And instead, they replaced it with money. So on the second Beit HaMikdash, people were running after their money instead to run to Hashem. So Chachamim realized at that generation that these people are not going to run to give loans, especially if they take a risk on their money, especially if there is no interest, and especially if there is no gain and there is a lot of risk involved. And the people are so connected to their money that they will not care to do a mitzvah. So that's why the Chachamim came back and they said, no, sabbatical year does not take away from you the loan. Okay, continue giving loans. We're not getting interest, why should we give it? Okay, make them a partner in the business so they can get something benefiting, so they can continue giving loans. Okay, who guarantees me? Okay, take guarantors. What else do you need? Just to give loans. Because the Chachamim realized the obligation and the mitzvah of a loan is even greater than charity. Why, says the Talmud? When you give charity, you give to the poor. When you give a loan, is to the poor and the wealthy.
So these rules and laws actually evolved as years went by. It's not...
Correct. That's, on the first Beit HaMikdash was the way the Torah says, because the Jewish people were on a higher level. During the second Beit HaMikdash and after, the Chachamim implemented new laws, so at least what the Torah's essential mitzvah was to lend should be kept. Because the Chachamim felt that people really need the ability to lend money. Page 83, text 8. Who wants to read?
Bob.
Bob.
Who's Bob? Bob, read. Yeah. Bob.
I don't have a book.
Get one.
Bob.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm without a book.
Yeah.
You know by heart, no?
Which one did you want?
You are the lender. You bring the lender, no?
How much interest do you pay?
I thought how many points you're willing to take.
Do you want me to read this in Hebrew or English?
English. You can read in Hebrew if you know how.
You asked me about the case of Reuben, a poor individual who receives a weekly stipend from the charity fund. His creditor demands that the custodian of the fund repay the debt from the charity funds allotted to Reuben. Is this permitted? Continue? Or
Yeah.
reply.
Text 9. 85.
On one hand, secular law is more generous to the debtor vis-a-vis the relationship to the creditor. The secular law gives the debtor more escape hatches than does Jewish law. Jewish law basically says you have no way of escaping the clutches of the creditor. But that has to be understood in tandem with the fact that communal responsibilities toward the debtor are much greater. Halacha says the loss is not going to be suffered by the creditor, but the loss will, in effect, be shared by society as a whole. It's really the theory of loss spreading, like insurance. Insurance is often described as a loss spreading mechanism. Instead of one person suffering a catastrophic loss, all of society through premium bears a little bit of that loss. I would describe the halakhic debt collection system that way as well, which means if you only look at it in terms of the creditor and the debtor, it looks like we have a fairly hard-headed system. The debtor has no means of escape. But if you look at the total picture in terms of societal obligations, then you can actually see that it's really a very sophisticated loss-sharing mechanism.
Okay. So here we understand there is advantage and disadvantage, but the Torah clearly describes that according to the Jewish law is spreading the loss with other people is like an insurance policy. Why is the community responsible for the poor people? Is not to say that individual is not responsible. But the individual can do as much as an individual can do. But as a community together, we're all in the same boat to help out. So we're all obligated to do our best to try to help out. Question only comes when we say Dina de Malchuta Dina. The law of the country is the law. Now, according to the law of the country, a person who files bankruptcy can move on, is forgiven. According to the Torah, there is two opinions. One opinion says in Halacha, it's you still owe the money, according to Shach, very famous Kohen, who made this rule. This is the way it is. You took the loan, you have to pay back. Doesn't matter what society you live. The moment you have the money, you got to pay back. The Rama, Rabbi Moshe Isserlich, says, no. If you live in a society that it's not obligated to pay back after you made a bankruptcy, move on. So there is two opinions. Whose opinion should we follow? Should we follow the strictest opinion? There was once a bed din that they about to force someone to pay the money that he owed, based on the halacha that a Jew has to pay back the loan. And the man says, but I follow the Rama, Rabbi Moshe Isserlich's opinion, that he says, if the law of the country is not, it's fine. And the bed din had to give up. Yes?
But isn't it, you have to follow the law of the country unless it, doesn't comport with the Torah law? I mean, you can work on Saturday in America. Doesn't mean that we work on Saturday.
Yeah, but even in places like Russia, that they were obligated to work on Saturday, the Jewish people went against them and did not work on Saturday, those who wanted to observe Shabbat.
Right.
Obviously, they violated the law of the country.
Right. So you don't have to violate the law of the country because there's nothing violated.
However, the law of the country is, in order to get a divorce here, you go to the courts and get a civil divorce. But doesn't mean you don't need a get. Still, the Torah says you must give a get.
Right, so for the same reason, you should follow the law that says that you still owe the money.
But when it comes to monetary laws, the Torah gives you the option. In monetary laws, where the government, let's say, puts taxes on you, are you obligated to pay taxes if you can find a way out? The Torah says, Dina de Malchuta Dina. If you live in this country, you're a resident here, you got to pay taxes. It's according to Jewish law too. So Dina de Malchuta Dina is not to take advantage of the country. How do we know that? Let's say, imagine, that's a Talmudic question. Someone walked over to a few laborers on the street, said, I want to hire you for the day. How much you paying? $50 a day. Okay, they want to work for you? Said, I'm sorry, you worked only a half a day. What do you mean we worked half a day? We worked a full day. No, the Torah says to work full day starts from sunrise to sunset. You work only 8 hours. The day is 12 and a half hours. Especially in the summer, it's 15 hours. You will work only half a day for me. They said, well, the way it's the custom in this country, day labor is 8 hours a day. We didn't work 8 hours. We don't have to work more. The dispute came to the rabbis. What is the answer that the rabbis gave? The law of the land is the law. The way it's the custom in that location, that's the way the custom is. Unless you specify, I want you to work 15 hours for me for this money. If you didn't specify, it goes the way it is. Yeah.
So it's not about the law of the land, it's about their expectation. Whether there was a law or there wasn't a law of the land. If they expect that you're talking about 8 hours, then that's 8 hours. whether or not, the law of the land is you work it out.
However, if you did agree specifically differently,
Right.
that's fine. Otherwise, we follow that.
So it's a question of what you really agreed to.
Correct. But if you didn't specify, then you follow the law of the land, not the law of the Torah. That's what's the interesting part. So it comes back to our first original question. What way do we settle the case? The person went to Israel, got wealthy, and now he has money. Should he pay back or not?
Now he's in Israel, what is the law of the land?
But the law of the land was in New York when he took the money. Now he moved to Israel. So okay, he moved to another country. So it depends where he moves. Or it depends what the Torah now has to say. Especially in Israel, should the Torah say what you have to do?
Yeah, the Torah has to say what to do. Actually, it should be the place that he borrowed the money. The law of that land has to give him the thing.
For that land, he already did chapter 11 or chapter 7, whatever, and he won. Moved on, yeah.
Well, let's say he takes it in America. If you're saying that the expectation of the people who are the recipients of the loan, or who are recipients of, or who are the workers, if it's their expectation that you're going to abide by the laws of the country, then that is the agreement under which you took the loan, right? After all, a loan is an agreement between creditor and debt.
Do you remember my story from last week? But we started that story, why the judge was suffering.
I'm sorry, I wasn't here last week.
Okay. So let's forget about the story. Let's move on to what is the response that the Torah takes when there is several differences of opinions. One says you should follow the land, one says you should follow the Torah, one said you should follow just the Torah, not the land, one says just the land and not the Torah. So who do you follow? The Torah, in a brilliant way, when the Torah wants to explain how to go about a judgment, Torah page 91:12a says, Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. And the question is, why is the Torah repeating the word justice twice? Justice, justice, justice you should pursue. And the Talmud says, one refers to the court ruling, and the other one refers to a compromise. Torah says there is a court ruling, but there is a compromise. And the Talmud on page 91 continues, it's a mitzvah to settle. A settlement and by mediation is a mitzvah. How do we know that? Because the Torah says in Zechariah, Emet u'mishpat shalom shiftu b'sharechem. Emet u'mishpat shalom. Emet is truth and a judgment of peace. If it's truth, it's not peace. And if it's peace, it's not truth. So which one is it? Ela, says the Talmud, Eizu mishpat sheyesh b'shalom, which is the truth, which is the judgment that has peace? Havei omer ze bitzua, when you make a settlement. Imagine if you have a kashrut law, and the rabbi comes to the butcher and tells the butcher, you know, this cow that you just made shchita, slaughter, is not kosher. What is the butcher going to do? Butcher going to do the take away immediately and sell it to non-Jewish people or whatever. Not going to argue with the rabbi. But if the two people came to argue in front of the rabbi and the one said he owes me and the other one says he owes me, or they argue who doesn't belong to, and the rabbi said one belongs, the other one doesn't belong. One is right, one is wrong. Now the one who is wrong is going to argue with the rabbi. Why do you say I'm wrong? I'm not wrong. The same butcher If the rabbi would tell him that the cow is not kosher and he lost so much more money, he would not argue with the rabbi. But if the rabbi says that you are wrong and the other one is right, then he begins to argue. It's not because about the money. It's about to see, I am wrong and he is right. That's impossible. If I am wrong, the other one could not be right. That's where begins the conflict of people. Torah says, in order not to make someone completely wrong and the other one completely right, you have to try to settle it. So the response of Rabbi Metzger was, since the people came after him and they tried to say, well, now you're okay, you can afford to pay us back, so pay us back the loan that you took originally. Rabbi Metzger suggested, go settle with them. Settle it. By settlement, no one will be happy or everyone will be happy. But usually by settlement, no one is happy, but everyone comes out with something. So no one is perfectly right and no one is perfectly wrong. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Says Rabbi Metzger that you have to find a mediation. You have to find to mediate. It means a person should not always reject mediation. But if a person claims, no way, I will not do mediation, I want to fight with you in court, there is a ruling. Then there will be a rule. But the best rule is mediation. And that's a general approach in Torah. In every bedin, in every way it's possible, the approach is mediation. Try to mediate because that's the way we can connect. Go to page 93. Maybe read it for us. Story of Mark Twain.
It has been reported that I sacrificed for the benefit of the creditors the property of the publishing firm whose financial backer I was, and that I am now lecturing for my own benefit. This is an error. I intend the lectures as well as the property for the creditors. The law recognizes no mortgage on a man's brain, and a merchant who has given up all that he may take advantage of the rules of insolvency and start free again for himself. But I am not a businessman, and honor is a harder master than the law. It cannot compromise for less than 100 cents on the dollar, and its debts never outlaw. From my reception thus far in my lecturing tour, I am confident that if I live, I can pay off the last debt within 4 years, after which, at the age of 64, I can make a fresh and unencumbered start in life. I do not enjoy the hard travel.
Let me just stop you for 1 second. Let me give you a small introduction. Stories of Mark Twain, very famous writer. In 1894, he was a partner in a company, and he owned 1/3 of the company. And this company fell apart and owed a lot of money to different people. And because they took away all the assets and was still far away from paying everyone, the court came out with a ruling. And usually a corporation, you're not personally responsible, right? It's a corporation. But since Mark Twain was part of the partners, and he was 1/3 only, the ruling came out of the court, he has to pay whatever the company still owes, he has to pay from his own. So Mark Twain came out and he made a plan that he will begin traveling and give lectures, and with that he will be able to pay back. And one time he decided he will travel all the way 1894 to travel to Australia to give lectures there, to be able to pay his loan. And before he left to Australia, they published in New York Times this page that Mark Twain wrote to New York Times, Why is he going to Australia? And now start it again, text 14.
Okay, I do not enjoy the hard travel and broken rest inseparable from lecturing, and if it had not been for the impervious moral necessity of paying these debts, which I never contracted but which were accumulated on the faith of my name by those who had a presumptive right to use it, I should never have taken the road to my time of life. I could have supported myself comfortably by writing, but writing is too slow for the demands that I have met. Therefore, I've begun to lecture my way around the world. I met, when I began, to give my creditors all the benefits of this, but I begin to feel that I am gaining something from it too, that my dividends, if not available for banking purposes, may be even more satisfactory than theirs.
So he felt in the beginning he was like a victim, that they took him and they said, oh, Mark Twain can afford it, let him pay it. But he was not even running the company. His name was there, but there was somebody else who made a mess. And that someone else came out innocent. He didn't have what to pay, so they said, okay, you know what? Turn around to Mark Twain, he will take care of it. But by the end, Mark Twain realized, okay, I'm sacrificing my time. 4 years of his life he was traveling to lecture, to pay back. But by the end of the 4 years, says, I gained something out of it. I realized how important it is to pay back your debts and how to make the world to understand how important it is to keep the right way. It's worth more than 4 years in my life. It was worth it to sacrifice 4 years to learn that lesson. So here we can understand that there is dina de malchuta dina, there is din, the law of the man, and then there is the law of Hashem. Between man and man, perhaps you don't have to pay back. But with man and God, you do owe back the money. And for that reason, it's better to go around and make sure to pay back the last penny. Because you don't want, between man and God, still owe this money. So that's what Mark Twain learned. And the Talmud continues with other examples, but that's the idea. Between man and man is one law, man and God is beyond the level of the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tonight is Tu B'Shvat. Please make bracha, Shivat Aminim, and Bezrat Hashem should be a new Rosh Hashanah with good news. Bezrat Hashem. It's what's happening. Let me ask you a question.
I don't work remote.
We're moving on with all the plans. I'm excited a lot of.
You want to go to the class?
They bought a house for
No, but it's not that. Okay. It's somewhere, you know, it still doesn't overheat, so.
Good night, everybody. Rob, thank you. Thank you. Good night.
It still is a hope.
Always a hope.
No, Avdati Quateno.
No, Avdati
Thank you for class.
Actually, you're supposed to have a fruit that you never, the first time you did this year.
You can have it, yes.
The only way that.
Rabbi, you want to finish the lady gets into Radisha story?
There are so many of them, I don't know which one.